This is the Horse Radio Network.
I'm Stacy Westfall, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show, the Western Dressage episode. Coming up on today's show, I talk with Diney Swanson, Executive Director of the WDAA, about what's coming up in the Western Dressage world. I also talk with Julie Haugen and Scott MacGregor about judging and training gaited horses for Western Dressage. But before we get into that, I would like to talk with Diney Swanson, Executive Director of the Western Dressage Association of America, about what just happened and what's coming up next. Hi, Diney. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. We had quite the exciting weekend, and yeah. I bet for you, does it feel like you've kind of completed this master thing you had no idea was coming at you in the spring?
Yes and no. It was a big relief to announce the awards, but now I have to pack up 750 boxes of awards.
Okay, so 750 award boxes going out for the Western Dressage World Show Championship Awards. That's a lot of boxes.
Yes. Well, let's say boxes for some, and everybody gets a exhibitor gift, which contain those cute patches with the little. We did the pandemic pivot on it, which is fun.
Yes,
and plus some swag.
Cool. Very good. That sounds like yeah, you're not quite done. So the main showing was done, and I have to say that at least from my end, I know I discussed it in earlier podcasts that I was kind of unprepared for the amount of work that went into filming at home. But as far as I could see, participating on my end, as far as entering, staying updated from show secretary, getting my video uploaded and approved, all the way through even your decisions on the judging process and announcing the classes and having us double check our score sheets and all that. I thought it ran beautifully well on our end. So I don't know what you guys were doing for like paddling behind the scenes, but it worked really well on our end. So congratulations.
It was definitely like a duck in a hurricane, where it was maybe might have been still on top, but underneath it was working very, very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So it went, I'm actually still kind of amazed at how well it went. And I'm ready to do another one. So you haven't even quite recovered, and I want to know what's coming up next in the WDAA world.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is offer, and we're going to rename it. It'll be we're going to actually allow our exhibitors to name it, but it'll be an international online show.
Yep.
It won't be the WDA Western Dressage World Championship show, because that belongs in person forevermore. But we just kind of had to rethink it this year, but next year we will do it in person. But this was, this online show is such a gigantic success that we've gone ahead and decided to do an international challenge or showdown or something like that, probably in June. So it's good for the northern regions, and it's okay for the southern regions too.
Good deal. Yeah, and I know I haven't fully wrapped my head around how next year's going to look, coming off from this year, but I'm excited that, AQHA is offering classes at the World Show, and so that looks like it's going to become a thing, and AQHA pointing classes at WDAA shows, and so I know it's kind of early because we're pre, we haven't even made it through the holiday season yet, but I'm excited to see what else develops for next year. And I'm super glad that I participated in the online World Show. So that was quite the adventure. And I'm glad you guys did it, because it pushed me off from the edge of my chair watching and into actually executing. So
yeah, we've all learned quite a bit, and we'll be sharing that new knowledge with everybody, later this winter on, how-tos for online showing, because it has opened an entirely new door for a lot of people.
It has.
Yeah.
And so the only other thing that really comes to mind for me when I think of WDAA in the spring is the judges seminar. So is that kind of on track?
Nope. No, we have canceled that just because it was going to be impossible to be able to get a place big enough to hold everybody and social distance. And, you never know when these spikes are going to come. So the deadline for licensed judges, isn't until the end of the year. So basically everybody who attended, who's a licensed judge, or getting licensed in February of 2020, that period does not end until December 1st or November 30th. So what we're going to do is we're in the process right now of building an online judges seminar.
Yeah.
And again, this has forced us to do something new.
Yeah.
So for our renewing judges that have to attend every 3 years, we'll provide that. And then hopefully in the future go to a part in person and a part online seminar, so we can include more people, be more thorough, and cover more bases with that. So there'll be announcements coming up about that.
That is, I'm actually kind of excited to hear that. Not that, I think in a very similar way that live showing has its place and will never be completely replaced by virtual showing. But one thing that makes me excited about the idea of you guys doing some kind of virtual segment to it is that when I decided in the spring of 2019 to attend as an auditor, because I don't have a desire to become a judge, I admire what they do, and it's a phenomenal amount of commitment and work for them to become a judge, but I did want the information. So the fact that you guys are going to make maybe another pivot and take some of that online, where I could potentially be at home and audit some version piece of it, is super exciting for me to hear, because I know that I walked away with a lot of valuable information from attending live, but there is an attraction to me to do some of this from home. So that is exciting. And I know that the membership portal has really opened up and is getting really filled up with some great information. So that's our new learning management system that all WDA members can access. And, that's why we brought it on last year this time, was to start truly educating everybody and giving everybody access to some really great information. So it's constantly being built out with more and more information. Yeah, I know that when I was, suddenly found myself remeasuring and verifying the sizes of my, where my letters were set and stuff, it was super convenient to go on there and actually have actually have it in a format where the numbers were already converted for me. I could use my tape measure and didn't have to try to convert my meters to feet and all this little detailed things of the tip on how to create the angle to make a square. I was like, oh my goodness, where has this been my whole life setting up things like this? So all good things. Well, thank you for joining me today. I know you are super pressed for time because you have 700 and some odd boxes to mail out. So thanks for taking time out of your day.
Thanks for having me.
We would like to welcome ProStride as a brand new title sponsor for the Dressage radio show, including the Western Dressage episode. ProStride is the all-natural solution for lameness. It uses the power of your horse's own blood to relieve pain, reduce inflammation, and improve mobility to keep them sound. ProStride can be completed stall-side by your veterinarian in just 20 minutes with no need for trailering. ProStride is backed by years of science and success stories. Olympians to pleasure riders, trainers, horse owners, and their veterinarians trust the improved performance and lasting results reported with a single injection. No series, no daily supplements, and no monthly regimen. When every stride counts, demand the difference they deserve. Ask your veterinarian about ProStride. Learn more at pro-stride.com. That's pro-stride.com.
With me today for the Judge's View is Julie Haugen of Loveland, Colorado. Julie is a US EF dressage judge and a USEF Large R Western Dressage judge. She has over 30 years of experience training multiple breeds in various disciplines and instructing riders of all levels. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Julie.
Thanks for having me.
Well, okay, here's how it goes. I was talking about doing a podcast on Western dressage and gaited horses, and your name kept coming up as a great person to talk to. And I'm kind of curious, like, what is your history with gaited horses? And that's kind of where I'm going to start.
It's kind of a funny history about that. My parents had Tennessee walking horses when I was growing up, and my husband's family had walking horses, but I didn't do tons with them. I had a lady come to me with her 2 Tennessee walkers, and she wanted me to train them and help them be better horses in dressage as gaited horses. So that's how I started working with them, was with her.
Okay. And now you also judge them, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, I went to the judges seminar, the Western Dressage Judges Seminar, 5-7 years back, when it was in Oklahoma, and found out that they had a division for the gaited horses, and was thrilled about that. And I brought it back to her, and we started showing her horses in the Western Dressage, and that's when I got my judge's card for it as well. But so that I didn't judge gaited horses in the regular gaited horse world.
Okay. And it's interesting because I attended the judges seminar a couple of years ago. I'm trying to remember now too. And that was really the first time that I really realized that they had a gaited division. And there are a lot of people who have gaited horses that are very excited about it. And I was, kind of briefly educated on it at the seminar, but also, the thing I walked away with, maybe one of the biggest things, was they were like, okay, you're going to see a lot of different breeds that are going to show, because we're just calling it a gaited division. So inside of there, you could have Tennessee walking horses, Pasafinos. And at this point, I'm going like, ooh, this sounds challenging. And they kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, they said, now you're going to call it walk, gait, lope. Is that correct?
It's called a saddle gait in the Western Dressage.
Saddle gait. Okay. And I was thinking, again, I was there just kind of for the educational purposes. I wasn't trying to become a judge. I was actually getting ready to show and thought it was a great educational tool. But I was sitting back going, this sounds like a lot. So when you started studying, or when somebody goes in to judge gaited horses, if they don't have the background from the gaited horses, how does that look?
I've really helped a lot of my friends that were interested in doing the Western Dressage judging, and other people. I've actually been the one that talks at the seminar, trying to explain to these people, look, because some people assume immediately they must be lame, and some of them are, don't get me wrong, but many are not. But I try to express to them that it's about a regularity of a 4-beat rhythm.
Okay.
That it can't go 1, 2, 3, 4. It can't, it's got to stay very regular and even. The footfall pattern isn't as paramount in Western Dressage. It doesn't matter. They can be doing what some people call a rack, which is a broken trot, and or what the Tennessee walking horse breed calls the flat walk, which is a broken walk. I mean, a walk is broken anyways. It's 4-beat, but it does not look like a regular walk, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people will say, oh, they're trotting behind and walking in front. Maybe if you want to conceptualize that, I don't. I just see it that it's the footfall pattern of left front, or left hind, left front, right hind, right front, versus a diagonal disassociation, making it a rack.
Okay. I like the simplicity of looking for that regularity. And I'm guessing that, so if I'm a spectator watching, and I do want to touch more on the judging, but I don't even know the questions to ask, but if I'm a spectator watching and the horse comes in, I'm probably going to identify the walk, and then the saddle gait, you're telling me, is going to be that looking for the regularity of the 4-beat gait. And I'm going to guess that since corners tend to be a challenge riding on my quarter horse, that might be the same thing, where you're going to find that during those different movements like that is going to be where you'd see the irregularity.
Absolutely. The bending and going through a smaller turn, that's where they're either going to want to slow down or get pacey, get lateral.
Okay.
And because they're stiff, part of the reason a horse will gait is because they're a little tight in the back. So to have relaxation of the back and maintain a gait is actually very difficult in the training aspect. But once you get it, the gait is better because there's more swing, just like any other animal, right? So definitely in the turns, in and out of a transition, some horses will get really what they can consider mixy, unclear in their rhythm, in and out of the lope, or out of a regular walk. They'll kind of pace a couple times and then go. So those will be, faults that you will see. The other thing that a lot of spectators that haven't watched a lot of gaited horses draw attention to is, and judges that are learning, is the movement of the head, the oscillation of the neck.
Yes.
And that head nod that comes from the Tennessee walkers. A good Tennessee walker does that head nod when they're relaxed in their back, just like a really good trotting horse, when he's walking, oscillates their neck, or in the lope, they oscillate that neck, right? So it's not a bad thing. And then you will get the ear flapping, because that shows relaxation. Those are all good things, as long as they're not too quick and they're not too, their rhythm is clear.
I'm glad you brought up the head nod, because were you at the Western Dressage World Show last year and watching the freestyle?
Yeah.
The nodding, the one, was it a lion? The gaited horse that had the lion's mane was my favorite, because he had like a lion kind of head on the horse.
I don't remember it being a gaited horse. Isn't that funny?
And it was so, I think I actually went back and found it online to watch it, because the nod made the ears and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite. This is one of my favorite. And the timing to the music.
Yeah, sure.
The timing to the music with the head nod, with that headdress of a lion thing and the ears moving like that. I was like, I love this. I love this so much. It was, and that was, so this is now my picture of this gaited horse nod, but it was so perfect with the timing and the costume and the way the horse, obviously they'd pick the music to match that gait. And it was perfect. I'll have to find it and send you a link.
Oh yeah. I'd love to see that. So funny.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really great. So when someone is showing a gaited horse and you're sitting at sea and you're judging them, do you see any unique challenges to showing the gaited horses?
Absolutely. In the if they're a good strided gaited horse, the shorter ring, the basic and intro level, is actually pretty difficult for them, because it's like they start to get into their really good rhythm, and then they got to turn again. And so you have to train that balance into them. And then, just like any of the other horses, transitions, bending, I found it, me personally, showing the horse that I show for my client, teaching him to do the free saddle gait. Difficult, because a lot of times with the gaited horses, contact helps you drive them up into that gait. So you give the contact and they're like, oh, let's just walk. Good plan. So teaching that, but once I got that, and I think that becomes a challenge for a lot of the gaited horse exhibitors. And it's a place where, as a judge, you're not looking for flaws in a horse that comes in the ring, but it can always be like a flag for you. I'm going to check and see, is that part of the training going in the right direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as a judge, that's basically your job, is to help whoever's in the ring continue their journey in the training process for themselves and their horse.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the circles and leg yielding, because again, they're like, this is kind of hard. All the lateral movement is hard. They either want to break to trot, because that makes sense, or they just slow their rhythm because it's hard to maintain the gait. So like Scott MacGregor doing that level 3 stuff with his one horse, here's to him.
Yeah.
He does a great job.
Yes, the stuff I've seen, it does look amazing. And I guess that when you bring up Scott showing the level 3 stuff, one thing I've heard is really challenging. And the gaited horses I've watched, obviously they're built kind of different, which is why they gait. There's some differences in the way that they're put together. A lot of them seem like the lope is a challenge. Is that just kind of individual, or is that kind of across the board for the gaited horses?
There are two kind of camps of belief. One is that all gaited horses don't have good canters.
Okay.
And the other is that it depends on the individual horse. I would go with the second, that it does depend on the individual horse. However, yes, lopes are harder because you need suspension to lope. And gaited horses by nature, we take a lot of the suspension out of them to make them smooth.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. That's actually maybe the most clarifying statement I've heard about gaited horses yet.
Some of their lopes get pacey because they'd rather just drop that one shoulder, or, and stay kind of grounded, as it were. So you have to really know what you're riding to get the suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, like in some cases, they'll just really try to elevate the front legs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like falsely pull them up,
mm-hmm.
like they kind of do in the Tennessee walking horse ring breed stuff,
mm-hmm.
where they get a little bit more like an oil rig.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But that they're still kind of grounded, as it were. And so that suspension. Now, the lady that I train the horse for, she's always said, she's been in Tennessee walking horses for years. She says that if you want a cantering or loping Tennessee walker, they have to naturally want to trot when they're loose. Because then they'll have a good lope. And I would agree with that. The black horse that I show, it took me over 2 years to teach him to gait because he wanted to trot.
Okay.
So, but he has a fabulous lope.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's been on my list of things to do. Is one of these summers, I live behind a state park. I keep thinking, one of these summers, I'm going to borrow a gaited horse and, ride it, trail ride it, and also, ride in the arena and just play with all the different, techniques that we have that are supposed to improve any of the horses, but also just feel how that different movement, because I can see it, and the brief moments when I've gotten on a few, I can feel it, but I'm far from educated on, where to go with it. So this has been eye-opening. So thank you for joining me. If people would like to find you online, if they have any additional questions, where would they be able to find you?
Facebook is probably the easiest. They could messenger me for sure.
Okay.
That would be easiest.
Well, I will make sure that we put links to that in the show notes so that we get the spelling of your name correct. How do you spell the last name again? Haugen. Gen. Well, perfect. Thanks again for joining me tonight, Julie.
Tired of having your boot sucked off mid-stride by sticky mud? Mud control grids are the solution. Frustrated by mushy, slippery messes at the paddock gates? Mud control grids are the solution. Is keeping the ground underfoot stable in your sacrifice areas and dry lots causing you to lose sleep? Once again, mud control grids are the solution. You're seeing a trend here, aren't you? Well, Han Plastics mud control grids really has come up with the best solution. Unlike other plastic grids on the market, mud control grids can be installed directly on top of the mud. Let me say that again. Right on top of the mud. You don't need to do any ground preparation. The mud control grids are an instant solution to your high-traffic, muddy areas. No more having to fill in with sand, gravel, shavings, or even old carpet. What's more, mud control grids will allow grass to grow underneath of them, so they can be taken back up once the area is dry or recovered. Or you can leave them right where they are and take over again when the rainy season comes back around. Han Plastics mud control grids are designed to be installed as a temporary or permanent solution. You can take them with you move. Put down a lot, put down a few. Add more each year. The ultimate mud control solution. Check out Han Plastics mud control grids at mudgrid.ca. Oh, an added bonus, your tractor or gator won't sink up to its axles with Han Plastics mud control grids in place. So there's that. www.mudgrid.ca.
She swallowed hard as they walked into the start box. She could feel his muscles tense under her leg. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a great ride. She didn't have to ask. He galloped out of the box and across the field toward their first training level course. His ears pricked. Her heart pounded. He attacked each obstacle with confidence, clearing them with room to spare. A huge smile broke out on her face as she crossed through the finish flags. She leaned forward and buried her face in his neck. Their bond of love and trust blocked out all else. This love story is brought to you by Elevate. Research proven to have superior bioavailability. Elevate supplies the essential vitamin E often missing from the equine diet. Its all-natural formula supports healthy muscle and nerve functions. The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Call 859-873-2974 or visit kppusa.com to order today.
This week's dressage training tip is brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, home of the shoulder relief girth at TotalSaddleFit.com.
Joining me for the trainer's tip is Scott MacGregor. Scott is based in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He trains and shows gaited horses. He has invented better bits for gaited horses. He travels teaching clinics and competes very successfully. Although he's won numerous competitions, he's most proud of his wins in the Western dressage arena because it's the first USEF discipline to recognize and allow gaited horses. Thanks for joining me today, Scott. And the first thing I want to know is, how did you get involved in Western dressage with gaited horses?
Well, thanks for having me. And the Western dressage was basically an evolution out of gator dressage that we were doing within our breed. We were basically using the USEF tests and hiring USEF judges to judge us, and then obviously presenting the test with gated horses, replacing the trot movements with the gait. As far as Western goes, how I got involved in Western dressage is kind of backwards. I started being more comfortable riding in my Western saddle, even though I had a beautiful traditional dressage saddle. I found that I was cantering cleaner on the gaited horses, and the movements were more crisp, meaning I just was simply more comfortable in the saddle. And by this time, I guess Western dressage had been around for about 4 years. So I knew about it. I had looked over the tests, which I found really fun to ride. And I just decided after a show year that I was going to spend the winter really investing the training toward Western dressage itself, getting used to the tests and getting used to the equipment. And that's how I started.
Very good. Is your background primarily, is it pretty much all gaited horses. Is that what you specialize in?
Yes, this is my 34th year training gaited breeds. My background, what I apprenticed with and grew up with, were saddle seat breeds. So my background, saddle seat. So Arabs, saddlebreds, Tennessee Walkers. I had to teach myself in my 30s how to deal with the difference between saddle seat training and classic dressage training. And obviously I took lessons, which was extremely humiliating, my first 10 lessons, because I knew nothing and found out that the things I thought I knew were mostly wrong. And instead of being upset by the fact that I had to start over, I did it. I kept going and going for 3 years. I took a lesson every week until I had built upon enough comfort to, start being effective in the competition arena. So it was a very, very intentional choice, as was the change to Western dressage. I just found that my horses really enjoyed the equipment because the Western saddle disperses so much pressure across the back. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know. It really came down to I was very comfortable in the saddle. And it was easy. It didn't take a huge investment. My traditional dressage saddle was thousands of dollars. My Western saddle was $1,800. So it wasn't the massive investment I put into the dressage equipment changing to Western. It was easy and I like it. I hate to say this, but I'm really comfortable showing Western as a man. It makes me, I feel good. I don't know. This sounds really silly because, I enjoyed showing traditional in the traditional clothing also. But when I'm in that ring and I feel on top of the world, wearing my nicest outfit, my horse dressed up with a little bit of silver on him, and that Western saddle. I mean, I grew up watching cowboy movies like every other kid, so there you go.
Yeah, that's funny. I appreciate you bringing up the learning factor because, I know when I first took my probably at least the first 10 lessons that I took from traditional dressage trainers, I'd be like, I don't understand what you just said. Can you show me? And they'd show me and be like, okay, well, I don't call it that at all. And then, and then they'd be like, what are you doing with your right hand? And I'd be like, I'd be like, it's possessed. Well, okay, I know why it's going like that because it's doing things that I would do in neck reining, or it's doing things I would do in colt starting. But it's like unconsciously, competently trying to do things that are now wrong. Like it's trying to do something that was right in one world. And I'm like, give me a minute. I'm having this out of body experience. Like I'm trying to wrangle my own muscle memory back in here. And so, I think that it says a lot though. It to stretch yourself. It makes it so much easier to teach. I have so much compassion when I'm teaching people because I was there trying to change my muscle memory. And then I'm with you so much on the saddle thing. Like I love getting dressed up and going and doing it, but I'm more comfortable in my Western tack still. And so they keep teasing me because I earned my bronze medal in traditional on my little quarter pony. And I'm going to go work on my silver medal. And I'm doing most of the training in my Western because it's just where I'm comfortable. And so I train it in that and then I switch back. So, okay. So
I have another thing to bring up in that regard.
Okay.
I had to learn how to speak differently, right? You have to learn how to speak differently. You have to actually consciously learn how dressage is presented to the world using the words that are appropriate to dressage. And coming from the saddle seat, breeds, I spent a year with a friend actually helping me almost weekly as I would write things on my Facebook site, which I actually have a Gaited dressage Facebook site, and she would consistently try to help me by saying, this sounds better in this terms. It means something to us, and if you don't use these terms, the meaning is lost. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow. So, but like I said, it's an investment if you have to come from outside of classic horsemanship in almost every aspect, but it's fun. I don't know about you, but as I went through the decades of training, I actually got bored because I got good at what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So winning wasn't that difficult anymore. So what do? You look for something harder. Man, I found it.
Yeah.
It's hard to master.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah. I know I got teased behind the scenes at traditional shows. I got teased the most for my language of being like, I'm headed to the arena, or I'm going out to ride on the track, or I'm going, like, all my language. It was all there. But they were so funny because they like enjoyed it. They were like, "You're so funny." And I was like, "I'm glad you think I'm funny," because they didn't, I was afraid I'd be looked down on, and they just thought they were like, "Here, let me show you this," and it was just, it was very good. So,
yeah,
okay.
Absolutely my experience also.
Cool. So obviously I did not know, by the way, that gaited horses were already doing gaited dressage before that. So that was interesting to learn. So would Western dressage benefit all gaited horses? How do you see it fitting in here?
All right. So this is probably the most important thing that I think you could ask me. And the reason being, most gaited breeds are not engaged, many times because of the gait itself. So gaited breeds can range from doing the walking horse gait, which would be flat walk and running walk, or they're doing more of a racky style gait, which can be seen in some of the passos, the racking horse, the Rocky Mountain horse, and then you've got the foxtrotter, which obviously many of them can be very much out behind themselves. So the engagement itself leans toward the Tennessee Walker because of their hip design. Mm-hmm. So it fits our breed perfectly in that we can apply a lot of, actually so far I've been able to apply all the classic training techniques into this particular breed because they have such a huge ability to engage their hip and stride through, each step of their gait. So rounding them actually helps. It makes the horse better, substantially better in their gait, as well as their canter. So it's a different way of viewing the horse. You're basically dealing with a horse that has two gaits. They walk and they canter. However, within that walk, we designate three different speeds. You can walk like you're walking down the trail, or you can move up to a speed that's relatively similar to the trot, which is what we use in the Western dressage, or you can actually, through extension and rising through the withers, push into what we term as a running walk, which is what we would use on our extended passes in the gait. So it works perfectly because we have the distinction of these speeds look different from each other. And one of the hardest things I think for a gaited horse to do is when you're in the show ring and you have to do an extended gait, how do you make something that's having the exact same rhythm of footfall look like it has changed substantially into something that would equate with a trotting horse doing their extended trot? And that took a while. It took a while of really studying. What does it look like on video? What does it look like and feel like? And, through working with my instructor, we finally got to a point that it says, okay, we can definitely see changes that are equal to what a trotting horse would be expected to do in those situations. Mm-hmm. So, it benefited our breed. In my opinion, it almost saved our breed. We as a breed, the Tennessee walking horse, have been plagued with training methods that are from the 1940s that aren't useful to the breed of horse growing into the modern age. Mm-hmm. So you can't just say, okay, well, that's not probably the best way to do things anymore, but what else can I do? Well, if you apply classic training in those situations, you end up with a horse that's beautiful, balanced, presents itself in a very elegant way that's appealing to the public. And obviously the public would want to buy those horses. I sold 2 horses this spring, and it took me a total of 1 hour for one and 2 hours for the other on Facebook, just posting a video of them because they looked good and they were trained. They were sold on what they knew versus on how they were bred.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive distinction, because any horse can be improved through the classic training methods, and through those training methods increase their potential value. So that made a big difference, because no longer were you buying a set of papers that looked like, wow, you've got nice world champions on those papers. Now you're buying training. You're buying proven training. My horse is a first level horse. Well, then it should know how to do the first level movements.
Mm-hmm.
And my horse is a winning first level horse. Well, then it should know how to do all the first level movements really well.
Yeah.
And so you're selling the training instead of selling the breeding.
Mm-hmm. That's a great distinction, because I know when I was on your Facebook page and I was watching that ride that you did, I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, because that ride that you did it looks like you're riding in a small lake. Like the arena was just flooded. Can you tell me a little bit about that ride? Because here's what I saw. I don't know gaited horses that well, but what I saw was a horse that I would happily get on and ride. Like I saw a horse that I was like, I would easily be like, yep, I want to get on and ride that one. And to me, when I go to different disciplines and I look, I'm like, that's kind of one of my hallmarks. I'm like, if I don't know that much about it, first question, does it look like one that I would want to get on and ride? And that definitely passed it. Can you tell me a little bit about that ride?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that ride was on my horse Ozzy, my personal horse. And you still there?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, my phone was beeping.
Okay.
So that horse was my personal horse Ozzy. He's a 3-year-old, so he's in his very first, couple shows. And we arrived at the horse show, and it just finished dropping 2 inches of rain. So that the hurricane that had come up from I guess it was Louisiana, crossed over us that night and morning. And so I drove onto the property, and here's 2 inches of rain that's fallen. So the arena itself probably had between 1 to 6 inches deep water in it. So it looked like a lake.
Mm-hmm.
And our local GMO CTDA doesn't really cancel a show unless there's lightning, because most people wanted to show. In fact, only one person scratched out that show. So everybody showed in the lake. The footing was good, so there was no problem with that. But what really was neat to see in that young horse, the Tennessee Walker is generally a pretty calm breed. They're affable. They are quite happy to do what you want to do. The more compassion and love that you show them, the harder they work for you. So when you end up in a very odd situation, which the young horse had never seen before, he just kept doing his job because he knew I was happy with him. I was petting him and telling him he's a good boy, and he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So he ended up getting a tremendously good score. He won high score that day, mostly because he just went in there and did his job. He did the same thing he would have done without all the water. So
yeah,
that is a super neat attribute of our breed. And
that is
one of the things I think we've gotten, some really good building of relationships within our local area for both Western Dressage and the gaited horses.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a question, and it's, so I don't know that much about gaited horses myself. I've briefly ridden a few. If somebody were to ask me to train a gaited horse, if they were like, hey, Stacy, I want to send you the horse and have you start working on some Western dressage moves, and what would I notice that would be different if I started training a Tennessee Walker, just because of, like you've mentioned, the way that they're built different? What would I notice?
All right. So the hardest thing for the gaited people to understand is that if you take a horse and you begin to train them in a classic way, just like you train, any other of the breeds that might show up in a dressage arena, the technique works. It's a foundational technique that can be applied to any and all horses and better them. So what should you expect? You should expect that the horse is capable of taking a very long stride, that it's through, that it has tremendous balance, and the horses are extremely flexible. So when you're working on a bend, even a very tight bend in a 10-meter circle, or going through your transitions, they're able to sit into their gait from the canter extremely well, where it's an instantaneous change in balance. They're able to, the flexibility, I think, is their biggest attribute. When you're on bend and this long striding back leg movement is able to bend in, a very tight movement, it looks neat. It also looks fabulous when they're leg yielding, because they have a double cross leg type of look as they're yielding, and it's beautiful. It's almost astonishing how cool it looks, because you're basically seeing the legs come across each other pretty close together. They have to be in a 4-beat timing, but visually it looks very, very much together as they cross both their front and back legs because of their lateral base gait. So that movement is probably, in my opinion, prettier on a gaited horse, because it is so flattering to their gait itself. The hardest part of a gaited horse is their canter, because the Tennessee Walker has a very long, deep hip structure, and their gait itself is a lateral base gait. To get the diagonal legs to hit the ground clean in a 3-beat rhythm takes about a year to develop on most horses. A good horse might do it naturally right off the bat, but the longer the horse strides, the more work it is required to control the haunches. Now, many of my trotting friends said, well, that's true with our horses too. And, it is. I mean, but that's where I find that people have trouble when they go to canter them. It's like, well, this horse doesn't canter. It's like, well, you haven't built the haunches strength yet to support the canter. And, basically the best way to teach them to canter is to be in a field and let them get going. Don't worry about where they're going. Just be in a nice gigantic circle, or whatever working area you have, and just let them get going, get into the rhythm of it. And then over time, strengthen the haunches, lift them through the core, get them to drop, their head a little bit into a nice round presentation. And all of a sudden the canter starts coming together.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that, that I find people talking about the most, when they see a walking horse doing shoulder in, they're really good at shoulder in. It's almost the easiest thing that we can teach them. And it's correct. It's clean. It actually makes their gait better. Haunches in is very hard. It takes a lot of strength. Again, it's something that I teach after the canter. So the canter helps strengthen the haunch. And when we start working on the haunches in, the horses are usually in 2 to 3 years of training already. And then they finally have the strength to start getting a nice clean movement in the haunches in, and keeping their rhythm, their gait rhythm. That's hard and possible. And as far as limitations go, which don't exist in Western dressage, which is another reason that I got interested in it, we don't have to piaffe or passage, and we can't piaffe, because doing a gait in place would be a scramble, which has no rhythm. So it would actually be something that would be, in my opinion, kind of a bastardization of the movement. So probably best not to do it. And you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I want to, as a trainer, I want to stay as true to classic training as I possibly can, so that when a dressage rider sees my horse, they're like, wow, that is a really nice horse. It's well trained. It's balanced. It moves in a way that we can respect, and might be different, but it's a dressage horse. And I think that's something my trainer really instilled in me, Jessica Roberson. She said, I want people to see what you're producing and riding and say, wow, that's a nice dressage horse. It happens to be a gaited horse, but it's a nice dressage horse. And that's pretty much the ultimate compliment that we can seek, because we are different, and it's okay.
Well, you totally achieved that for me with your little horse Aussie on that video that I'll put a link to in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining me and for teaching me more about gaited horses. If people want to find you online, where should they go to find you?
So the easiest place to find me is probably on my Gaited Dressage website. My Gaited Dressage Facebook page, which is TWH Dressage. And that's Tennessee Walking Horse Dressage, but TWH Dressage on Facebook, and it'll come right up. And that's actually where most of the gated community does talk about dressage, whether it be classic or Western. We don't distinguish between the two. And so you're not just contacting me, although you'll find my own Facebook page on that site, which is the easiest way to find it. Otherwise, just under Scott MacGregor on Facebook.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining me.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me and learn a little bit about the Tennessee Walking Horse.
Well, Total Saddle Fit has the cinch that you've been looking for your Western dressage saddle. The shoulder relief cinch actually changes the position and angle of the billets to prevent the saddle tree from interfering with the shoulder. The center of the cinch is set forward to sit in the horse's natural girth groove, while the sides of the cinch are cut back to meet the billets 2 inches behind where the horse's natural girth groove lies. This brings the latigos from angling forward to becoming perpendicular to the ground, which reduces the saddle's tendency to be pulled forward into the shoulders. With horses that have shoulder interference without angled billets, it simply moves the billets back to keep the saddle further away from the shoulders. The secondary benefit to this shape is the cutback at the elbows. This gives more room for elbow movement as well and prevents galls in the elbow area. You can find the shoulder relief cinch at TotalSaddleFit.com. That's TotalSaddleFit.com.
Thanks again to Diney Swanson, Julie Haugen, and Scott MacGregor for joining me on today's show. If you're interested in hearing more from me, I have a podcast that you can find on your podcast player by searching Stacy Westfall. I also have a Western Dressage Facebook group with over 5,000 members who are interested in Western Dressage. You can search that over on Facebook. You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on the website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.